What's up everyone? Welcome to the start of Gen 8 Wi-Fi content on our channel. My name's PlatinumHowler, formerly the coach of the Coquitlam Red Gyarados, and now the coach of the Delta Gligars. This is going to be the draft analysis for Season 3 of the APA Academy. Before you do anything else, make sure to follow me on Twitter as well as the APA on Twitter to get all the updates related to the league that you need, and updates related to all of my other content as well, such as streams and whatnot. I'd also like to give a shout out to Grandmaster D-Ray right out of the gate for hosting a terrific draft stream and hooking us all up with these gorgeous draft slides. These are definitely something else, and really appreciate all of the work that went into this draft stream and getting these slides together for all 20 coaches involved in the league. As I mentioned, the APA Academy this season has a whopping 20 coaches. That's tied for the biggest league that I have been in. The BBR was also 20 coaches, but in the BBR we had a much greater pool of Pokemon to choose from, so that was all one draft. We had split into two conferences of 10 for battling, but it was all one draft. This season of APA Academy is a little bit different from that. We did split the coaches into two pools of 10 for drafting. However, those pools are not limited. Your opponents are not limited to your draft pools. So, for example, as you can see, I'm in draft pool 1, and my week 1 opponent was actually Grandmaster D-Ray, who is in pool 2, and my week 2 opponent is the Montreal Melodic, which are in pool 1. So that means that you can face people that are using the same mons as you, or you could face people that have the same mons as each other back-to-back weeks. Like, for example, my first 2 weeks, I have to prep for Alolan Persian for both games. And my first opponent, D-Ray, also has this. He has the same G-Max Mon as I do, and we'll get into that. Other than that, this is a pretty standard tiered draft. The G-Max slot functions very similarly to the Mega slot did in Generation 7, so we all get one G-Max Pokemon that can Dynamax up at any time that they wish in the battle. Doesn't have to be the first turn. So without further ado, let's get into the team that I drafted this season, and I'm going to go through this mostly by touching on the things that have changed with the certain mons in Generation 8, certain additions to their movesets that they've received, certain buffs that they've received since Generation 7. So I had the 3rd overall pick in Pool 1. The first pick of the draft was Dragapult. That seems to be the consensus #1 overall pick for new Generation 8 draft leagues these days. It's the new mon that everybody wants to use, so not too much of a surprise there. And then the second overall pick was Melmetal, which is also a very worthy of going #2 overall. So we have mons like Mew and Aegislash and Galarian Darmanitan that were all allowed in the first draft, the first iteration of the APA Academy draft. That was the pre-home draft, but this was a post-home draft, and in this draft, all 3 of those mons were actually banned. So, at the time the draft started, I wasn't aware of that. I had asked, is Mew still there? No, it's banned. Is Galarian Darmanitan still there? No, that's also banned. So, I decided to take Necrozma for my first overall pick. And since mons like Mew and Aegislash and Galarian Darmanitan are all banned, I maintain that Necrozma is the best Pokemon available in this draft. Don't even try to debate it with me. It's just a fact. Necrozma is the best Pokemon available in this league, and I got it. The reason why it's so lethal is because of its plethora of setup options. It can use Calm Mind, Iron Defense, Autotomize, Swords Dance, and additions to the setup moveset this generation are Dragon Dance and Cosmic Power. literally insane how much this mon can do. Funny story behind Dragon Dance. There was a video on my channel about a month ago of me facing a Necrozma in the NCL. Back when I had no idea that it actually got Dragon Dance, and it decimated me because I had no idea what was coming. At first I was like, what? Dragon Dance Necrozma? How does that make any sense? Well, Ultra Necrozma does gain a Dragon typing. Even though Ultra Necrozma is not in the game anymore, you need the Ultra Necrozium Z to have it in the game at all, and a Mega or Z bracelet or whatever. Ultra Necrozma still lives on in the form of giving regular Necrozma Dragon Dance. The really cool thing about that is before, if you wanted to run like a double dance set with Autotomize and Swords Dance, you could get +2/+2 boosts in each stat. Now, all you have to do is run Dragon Dance. That only takes up one move slot. You just click it twice to get to +2/+2. Its bulk is plenty enough to actually give it an opportunity to set up 2 Dragon Dances. Its ability Prism Armor certainly helps in that because it reduces super effective damage output against it. Another viable setup option that it has, speed control option that it has, Trick Room plus Room Service. Its middling speed really allows it to kind of hit any speed tier that it wants, especially with the addition of the new Room Service item, which I think is super cool. Photon Geyser, of course, is an outstanding move, being able to be used from either the special side or the physical side, depending on which attack stat is stronger. And also new this generation is a secondary physical attacking option, being Psychic Fangs. It did not get Psychic Fangs in Generation 7. It does now because Psychic Fangs is a new TR or TM. I'm not sure which it is, TM and TR. It doesn't really matter. So that's cool. It's an 85 base power physical move. It's not quite as strong as Photon Geyser is, but it has more PP. Photon Geyser only has 8 PP, so if you're wanting to go for more of a long game approach with Necrozma, then sometimes you may want that extra PP that Psychic Fangs can provide. Psychic Fangs also can destroy the opponent's screens. Now, it always got Brick Break, which could do the same thing, but now it gets a stab option to break screens that is even more powerful than Brick Break. Stored Power, of course, is a very scary part of Necrozma's moveset, given how many setup options it has available to it. It's also a Stealth Rocker. It also has Reliable Recovery right out of the gate. Not the most amazing Reliable Recovery in the form of Morning Sun or Moonlight, because like Photon Geyser, they only have 8 PP each. But it's certainly better than nothing. Convinced yet that this is the best Pokemon in the format? I guess you can be the judge of that, but I am for sure thrilled to get Necrozma with the 3rd overall pick in the draft. As soon as I picked up Necrozma, I knew exactly what direction I wanted to take this team. But with my next pick, first I wanted to make sure that I addressed an elite speed tier. Made sure that I had a Mon that could come in and just be good at being fast and getting kills and stuff like that. Especially because in this draft pool, there just aren't that many elite speed Mons to choose from. Really, there's like Dragapult, Zeraora, Barraskewda. Those are some really fast Mons, but then it dies off really fast after that. I actually had the opportunity to take Zeraora with this pick. It was still on the board when it came back around to my turn, but I decided to pass on it because I already had another electric type in mind that I wanted to take. So instead, I decided to take Weavile. Base 125 speed, this is the fastest Pokemon on my team. Weavile's just going to be good at doing Weavile things, you know? It comes in, its Dark Stab and Ice Stab together are incredibly hard to switch into. Not much variance in the sets that it runs week by week, but still equally challenging to prep for. It gained a couple new attacking options this generation. Icicle Spear is now a TM, so that is another physical attacking ice type move that it can use on top of Ice Punch or Icicle Crash. Now, the vast majority of the time, Icicle Crash is only going to hit 2 or 3 times, which would make it 3 hits would be just as strong as Ice Punch would be, but 3 hits would be weaker than Icicle Crash. Now, Icicle Crash has a chance to miss, so there's a lot of factors to keep in mind when you're considering which Ice-type move to run on Weavile, or you could even run multiple. Icicle Spear can definitely be a strong option because if you're lucky, it can get up to 125 base power if it gets all 5 hits. It also now gets Psycho Cut to be able to deal with the fighting types that threaten it tremendously. Obviously, anything with Mach Punch is going to scare Weavile out, but Necrozma is a pretty good switch into a lot of fighting types that might be wanting to go for Mach Punch, so I'm not overly concerned with that. Psycho Cut going to be hitting fighting types a little bit harder than Stab Icicle Crash would. Stab Icicle Spear that gets 4 or 5 hits would still be stronger than Psycho Cut, but again, that's a lot less reliable. And Psycho Cut also has a boosted critical hit ratio, which could be helpful. Weavile also really benefits from the new item Heavy Duty Boots because it can now switch in and click buttons a lot more freely, not having to fear rocks on the field. Of course, with its ice typing, it would be taking 25% every time it comes in. But now, if you don't need that extra life orb damage or something, like if you don't need to run a life orb, if you don't need any sort of boosting item to run on Weavile, then you can slap the boots on it and switch it into hazards as many times as you need. So that's Weavile. I mentioned I had another electric type in mind, and I was going to pick that with my very next pick, and that is going to be Heliolisk. Another fighting weakness that doesn't really like taking Mach Punches, but like I said, the Crossman is in the back waiting to eat those Mach Punches like it's nothing, and my next pick will also take care of that fighting weakness plenty. It'll probably take a few more picks till you start to realize why I wanted Heliolisk so much for this team ahead of something like Zeraora. But for now, let's just get into what Heliolisk can do this generation. Heliolisk gets Weather Ball, which it's kind of fitting that it does have that in its move pool now, given how all 3 of its abilities are so weather dependent. Sand Veil is one of its abilities that you will almost never see it run. Even in Sandstorm, Weather Ball's type doesn't change. The only 3 forms of weather that Weather Ball's type will actually change is rain, sun, and hail. So Weather Ball doesn't really help it all that much in rain. It already got Surf, which is 90 base power, but now if in rain you could use Weather Ball, which is 10 base power stronger than Surf would be. The real benefit to having Weather Ball now is its ability to use a 100 base power fire type move in the sun. Previously, its only fire coverage was Fire Punch, which is not very good coming off of base 55 physical attack. Now it can punish mons like Ferrothorn, which would otherwise wall the crap out of Heliolisk, as long as the sun is set up. Another cool option that Heliolisk gets is Electro Ball, which it did not previously get in Generation 7. This can be a very powerful option in the right matchup if it has a huge advantage in speed tiers. If Heliolisk's speed stat is anywhere between 3 to 4 times as much as the opponent, Electro Ball will be 120 base power. That's already 10 base points stronger than running Thunder on Heliolisk, and it's, of course, 100% accurate, whereas Thunder is usually 70% accurate unless you're running it in the rain. And if it's greater than 4 times as much as the opponent's speed stat, Electro Ball will max out at a base power of 150. If you compare that with Choice Scarf, run Choice Scarf Heliolisk with Electro Ball, or you can use Agility with Heliolisk if you get the opportunity to set up, boost that speed stat further, boost the damage output of Electro Ball. It can be a very dangerous wall-breaking option on this Pokemon. It already had outstanding coverage in Generation 7, being with, it has Dark Pulse, it has Focus Blast, Dragon Pulse, Grass Knot, and it's great to see its move pool getting even stronger. For my next pick, I was looking at options in Tier 2. That is a tier that I am required to draft a Pokemon from. So I was just going through, I think this was the right time to take my Tier 2. Usually I am not like super big on taking Tier 2 Pokemon. I usually prefer taking Tier 3 Pokemon. So as I go through this tier, there aren't like a ton of Mons that jump out to me and say, hey, this could be a really good fit for my team. But what I ended up going with was Mimikyu. I do have a little bit of experience using Mimikyu, but I've never been able to use it to the same level of success as my friend Ian has. That is by far his most successful Pokemon in terms of racking up kills. I have not even been able to come close at racking up the same number of kills with Mimikyu as him, but I do find that I'm able to use Mimikyu in some unconventional ways. I once came up with a support Mimikyu set running like max HP and max speed with Rocky Helmet to switch into a Pheromosa, so it could never quit. If it could never click like High Jump Kick, if it clicked U-turn, then it would break my disguise the first time, be taking Rocky Helmet chip, and then after my disguise is broken, I still 4 times resist the U-turn. And then if it were to U-turn into something like Entei, well, I would just click Destiny Bond, and Choice Banded Entei would kill Mimikyu because it's kind of frail on the physically defensive side. Point being, Mimikyu is not a one-trick pony. It can do a lot more than just click Swords Dance and run through a team. To be perfectly clear, that set that I mentioned was not one that I actually used. It was just one that I suggested to a friend. Mimikyu is often thought of as a frail Pokemon, but if invested in HP, it can actually take a hit or two that if you need it to. Like, it has comparable bulk on the special side to something like Hatterene, which often is brought with Assault Vest and Draining Kiss and stuff like that, so it can take hits, click Draining Kiss, and get a lot of that HP back. I mean, that's not really an option for Mimikyu with base 50 special attack, but the bulk is comparable. I mean, it has 55 base HP versus 105 SPDF, and Hatterene is 57 HP versus 103 SPDF. I mentioned the Trick Room plus Room Service set on Necrozma, also very viable on this Pokemon as well. Its speed being like roughly 20 base points higher than Necrozma's, but it can still make use of that in certain matchups. In terms of additions to its move pool, nothing too crazy, but it now actually gets access to Phantom Force, which it previously did not in Generation 7. So beforehand, Shadow Claw at base 70 power was Mimikyu's best option for a physical Ghost Stab. But now you can use Phantom Force. So if you're in a position to sweep at +2 with Mimikyu, and you just need a little bit extra damage output with your Ghost Stab to get the KO on a bulky water type or something like that, then you can opt for Phantom Force over... That's not a great example, because a bulky water type you could just click Play Rough again. So let's say that bulky water type is Toxapex, and you need a little bit of extra damage output against the Toxapex, then Phantom Force can go right through that. Phantom Force, of course, goes right through Protect. It ignores Protect, so that is not a viable strategy to deal with Mimikyu. With this next pick, the core that I had planned from the beginning for this team will start to take shape, as we're going to grab another Tier 3, and that's going to be Torkoal, which is going to set the sun for us. Now, Heliosk, with its ability Solar Power, likes having the sun up so that it can give a big special attack boost. It gives it a 1.5 special attack boost in the sun in exchange for 1/8 of its HP every turn that it is on the field with the sun up. And it will also buff Necrozma's recovery and its Heat Wave coverage as well. It will boost the power of its Heat Wave coverage so that it can deal with Steel types better. As I mentioned, Necrozma only having Morning Sun and Moonlight for its recovery, not ideal because of its low PP, but with Sun Up, instead of recovering 50% from those moves, and Crossman can actually recover up to 67%, up to 2/3 of its HP. Torkoal supports the team very well in that regard. On its own, generally not regarded as super offensive, base 85 in attack and special attack, but it does have some powerful moves that it can take advantage of if positioned right. For example, Eruption, base 150 power if at full HP. Sun boosted as well. Eruptions can be doing a ton of damage, especially if this gets set up in Trick Room, because it is base 20 and like nothing is going to be outslowing this thing in Trick Room except for like Pyukumuku. The best addition to its move pool this generation, Body Press. This move is so awesome. This is my most favorite new move added this generation. Being able to take its power from the user's defense stat. That is unprecedented. Previously, we've had moves like Psyshock and Secret Sword that could use the special attack stat but hit the opponent on the physical defensive side. You'd also have moves like Foul Play, which do damage based on the opponent's attack stat, but being able to deal damage based off your defense stat is super cool, especially with Torkoal, since it has a whopping base 140 defense. So Body Press is going to be doing some damage, especially useful against Pokemon like Tyranitar that want to switch in and get rid of the Sun that Torkoal has set with Drought. Well, Body Press is going to be doing a massive amount of damage to Tyranitar. Might just even OHKO that thing if you're running max defense, and you can win the Weather War immediately. This is also the second Stealth Rocker on my team, the first of 3 consecutive Stealth Rockers that I'm about to draft, and it can also serve as a Rapid Spinner. So this Mon is another Mon on top of Weavile that can highly benefit from the new item Heavy Duty Boots, because it can come in on Stealth Rocks, not take the 25%, and then Rapid Spin them away as many times as it likes. Although if you are running Boots, then you're going to have to trade off not having 8 turns of Sun by giving Torkoal a Heat Rock or something like that. With my next pick, I was looking to secure my G-Max Pokemon. I didn't want to get stuck with a G-Max Pokemon that I wasn't comfortable with for this team. Didn't want to get stuck with something that I didn't think fit this team. So I was looking at my options, and Sandaconda looked like the best fit. Because it's a ground type, I felt like it was just the best ground type that I could have taken for this team, looking at what was left in all the other tiers. It's also going to give me 40 extra free points to work with because it is in the 3rd tier of G-Max Pokemon. At first glance, this may not seem like the best fit for the team on paper, and I 100% agree. It definitely isn't the best G-Max fit, but of course, it doesn't have to run Sandspit. It has 2 other abilities, being Shed Skin and Sandveil. Sandspit, of course, if Sandaconda gets hit with any attack, it will start a Sandstorm, which you don't really want if you're using a Sun team with Torkoal on it. But it doesn't have to have that ability. You can just run it with Shed Skin and be totally well off. Funny story behind this as well. I actually used Sandaconda in my playthrough of Pokemon Sword, and I had caught a Silicobra from a max raid, and it had Sandveil. So it didn't have its brand new ability Sandspit. I had no idea that it got such a cool ability until I actually looked at Cerebi. Actually, the first 2 Mons of this line that I caught a Dynamax or a Gigantamax Sandaconda in a raid, and that also had Sandveil. So for the longest time, I had no idea that it got this cool new exclusive ability that could set Sand, because I got its hidden ability twice in a row. It's got a couple good support options. Of course, it's a Stealth Rocker, as I mentioned. It can slow the opponents down with Glare. Can also set up, boost its attack and defense with Coil. Really, the only move that will benefit from the accuracy boost of Coil would be Stone Edge. I really wish that this Pokemon got Iron Tail for Steel type coverage, but unfortunately its best Steel type coverage move is Iron Head. But still being able to boost its attack and defense can be very helpful. its exclusive G-Max move, G-Max Sandblast, I think it's pretty good. Instead of the ground type max move boosting its special defense, Sandblast is going to trap the opponent in a Sand Tomb-like effect so that it's going to be taking 1/8 residual damage every turn. So really just think of it as a more powerful ground type max move. Other coverage that it can get via max moves, it's Steel Spike, as I mentioned, it gets Iron Head so it can boost its defense. It can use Max Mindstorm because I believe this thing gets Psychic Fangs as well. Max Wormwind because this thing gets Dragon coverage like Outrage. Max Knuckle to boost its physical attack. You can use Max Knuckle from Body Press, so with its another mon with high base defense, just like Torkoal, that can make good use of Body Press, and also boost its physical attack when in max form. Max Darkness lowers the opponent's special defense, which isn't really relevant with Sandaconda. Max Rockfall, you'll have to be very careful of using because it does set the Sandstorm, so it might get rid of the sun that's on our field. And randomly, this thing gets Hurricane, so it can use Max Airstream from its base 65 special attack to give itself a speed boost. I guess if I had one criticism of the people making these draft slides, why are the G-Max mons so tiny? They're smaller than every other Pokemon on the draft slide. It's even smaller than Mimikyu. This thing is supposed to be like 67 feet tall, for God's sakes. One last important thing about the G-Max mons is G-Max Pokemon in this league are only allowed to hold a Pokeball. They must hold a Pokeball. They cannot hold any other item like Life Orb or Choice Band or Leftovers or something like that. They must hold a Pokeball. Now, for some G-Max Pokemon, like Butterfree, for example, that might want to run heavy-duty boots, that can be quite the crippling rule for those G-Max Pokemon. Sandaconda, not really. It's not terribly nerfed by the inability to run a useful item, but it does make G-Max mons in general a lot less overpowered in certain situations. So I mentioned with the extra 40 points that I gained from taking a Tier 3 G-Max Mon in Sandaconda, I was able to afford some better Pokemon to support the rest of my team. And for my Steel type, I would have had to dip into Tier 4 and take Steel type that I probably didn't want, that probably wouldn't have really worked for me too well. So this next round, I ended up taking Copperajah as my Steel type. From a totally non-competitive standpoint, Copperajah, hands down, is the best new design in Generation 8. And that's why I like it so much. It just looks awesome. And you look at its stats and it has, whoa, base 122 HP, that's awesome. Holy crap, base 130 attack, that's really awesome. You'd think it would be a little bit bulkier than that, but it actually really isn't terribly bulky, because it has base 69 defenses across the board, so its bulk in the end is kinda underwhelming. I kind of like to compare it to Wigglytuff, which is a mon that I drafted in the previous season of the IBL. Wigglytuff, massive HP, it has base 140 HP, and then only base 45 physical defense and base 50 special defense. So it's really crucial that you EV Copperajah effectively if you're wanting to use it as a wall. You can't really use it as a catch-all wall. Either you have to make it as bulky as possible on the physically defensive side, or as bulky as possible on the specially defensive side. Or if you're using this thing the best, you're not using it as a wall at all, and you're just using it as a straight-up powerhouse attacker. It has two very strong abilities that you can take advantage of, being Sheer Force and Heavy Metal. Sheer Force you can pair with Life Orb and deal lots of damage with moves like Stab Iron Head, Zen Headbutt, Play Rough. Those are the main three moves that it gets that takes really great advantage of Sheer Force. Or you can run Heavy Metal with Heavy Slam to make this thing as heavy as possible and increase the damage output of Heavy Slam. Another coverage move that it gets that can make use of its increased weight would be Heat Crash, so it can beat opposing steel types like Ferrothorn. It also gets Power Whip as a grass type coverage option, which is really nice, so it can beat things like Gastrodon. Curse could potentially be a nice setup option for it, allowing it to boost its attack and physical defense a little bit at the cost of lowering its speed, but of course base 30 speed already, that's not a huge cost to lower. And this will be the fourth and final Stealth Rocker on my team as well. And Copperajah can use Whirlwind, so it can actually phase out the opponents after it gets its rocks up and chip down the entirety of my opponent's team. I'm really hoping that I'll be able to make more efficient use of this Pokemon in this league than I have up until this point in just regular old Sword and Shield battles. Next up, we're going to grab our Tier 5, and this is an exceptional value pick in my book. It's going to be my Dragon type, and I think just one of the best Tier 5s that were available in general. That being Drampa! I saw this in Tier 5 and knew that I wanted it right away. The main reason being is because if you're running a Sun team, you need to have good, reliable switch-ins to opposing Fire types that can take advantage of your Sun. And Drampa does that really well because of its ability Cloudnine. It can switch in on Fire types and negate the extra damage boost that the opponent would be getting from the Sun and from its Fire type moves. And it doesn't get rid of the Sun entirely. It just ignores the effect of boosted damage and whatnot. So as soon as Drampa comes off the field and I bring in something like my Heliolisk, I can still take advantage of the Sun being present and get the solar power boost with my Heliolisk. It's really great that this is a post-home draft. I think if this was a pre-home draft, then this is rightfully tiered in Tier 5 because of the fact that it lost access to Roost and Defog. But now it gets both of those moves back, and because of that, I really think this should have been a Tier 4 Mon. But I will gladly take it as a value pick from Tier 5. The additions to its moveset this generation aren't that great. It gets Amnesia to boost its special defense, but it also already got Calm Mind, which you're probably going to see run a lot more often than Amnesia. And it does get Breaking Swipe as well, which is not really too viable a move in singles the majority of the time, but I can see it having some merit here because it can it has a 100% chance of lowering the opponent's physical attack. It is a physical attacking Dragon type move off of Drampa's base 60 physical attack. So not going to be doing a terrible amount of damage, but it can, I can see a niche where it might be able to help because it can lower the opposing Pokemon's attack stat. It also gets Dragon Dance, like a lot of Dragon types that didn't previously get Dragon Dance, but Drampa is probably the last Dragon type that you'll ever see using Dragon Dance with its base 60 attack and base 36 speed, so that's kind of irrelevant. Drampa has the highest special attack stat on my entire team, so this can definitely function well as a special wall breaker. It also rounds out my Trick Room core very nicely. I have really slow and powerful mons that can take advantage of Trick Room, such as Torkoal, Drampa, Copperajah. It can even boost its special attack further with its ability Berserk. Every time it falls below half HP, it'll get a special attack boost, and of course it can run Calm Mind as well. This is definitely a Tier 5 Mon that cannot be slept on. You have to prepare for it going into every match. Next up, we are rounding out our Sun Core, the finishing touch on the Sun Core, Chlorophyll Sweeper. Not gonna lie, I almost forgot that this Mon was available. I had my mind on Leafeon from the start, but being able to take Venusaur post-home is so much better than taking Leafeon. And thanks to the extra points, the extra free points gained from taking Sandaconda that I mentioned, this might have been a Mon that I might not have been able to afford otherwise. I probably would have had to take a much worse Steel type or I would have had to take a Leafeon instead if I didn't have those extra 40 points to work with. But I'm so glad that I got Venusaur, because as soon as I started looking at the additions that this Pokemon got, I got super excited to be using this Pokemon in this league. Venusaur is absolutely deadly in the sun with its chlorophyll boost. It also gets Weather Ball just like Heliosk, so it has a very strong fire-type attacking option to break through steel types that it would have struggled with before, such as Escavalier, Ferrothorn. It also gets Earth Power. Previously it did get Earthquake, but now having a special attacking ground-type coverage option is really amazing. So stuff like Heatran, even though it's not in the game, but eventually it will be, like post DLC, I'm sure it'll be in the game. Having access to both of those moves now basically means that it has perfect coverage to sweep through an entire team in the sun. Other benefits it can get from Sun: increased recovery from Synthesis, just like Necrozma gets its Moonlight and Morning Sun buffed in the sun. Synthesis gets the same buff. You can recover 2/3 of his HP in the sun. Growth, instead of boosting your attack and special attack by 1 stage, and now boosted by 2 stages. So, and it gets Sleep Powder too. So if you click Sleep Powder, put something on the other team to sleep, then you get, as you know, provided the Sleep Powder actually connects, then you get a free turn to click Growth and double your special attack stat. And so, I mean, that takes up 2 move slots, but if you only need 2 moves to sweep through an entire team, then that is a pretty deadly combination. It also gets Amnesia, just like Drampa does. That's a new move that it previously did not get, so it has the ability to be a special wall with recovery options like Synthesis, as I already mentioned, Leech Seed, just getting recovery from spamming Giga Drain as well. The one thing that this Pokemon lacks that I really wish that it got is Aromatherapy, so it can act as a Cleric. But I do have a Cleric option for my next pick to make up for that. Before we get into the next pick, quickly want to touch on another new item that I think Venusaur can make good use of. Eject Pack. It gets the Leaf Storm, so the Eject Pack, if it's holding it, after it lowers its own stats with by using Leaf Storm, it can switch out immediately, which I think is a really cool idea. Drampa could also potentially make use of that. After clicking something like Draco Meteor, it can switch out immediately after lowering its special attack. Looking forward to experimenting with those items this season. So as I mentioned, the next pick is a Cleric option, but I kind of think of this pick as more of a oh shit, you fucked up pick. And those are picks where you really need a Pokemon of a specific type, but the Pokemon that you're drafting of that type is super bad. And Togetic is not a good Pokemon at all, but one that I felt was necessary to draft because I don't have a single ground resistance on my team before I take this Pokemon. Every single Pokemon on my team is neutral, at least neutral to ground, and that is not I don't want to go the entire draft without having a single ground immunity or resistance. So yeah, I kind of had to take Togetic. I was wanting to take Golisopod in this slot because it would also have been a water type. You might notice I don't have a water type on my draft either. A water type that resists ground. That would have been really nice to have, but it was taken by another coach well before I was in the space of mind to draft that for myself. Yeah, I really don't like Togetic as a Pokemon. I think it's really passive. It doesn't make tremendous use of its Serene Grace ability. Like, it can't just flinch everything like Togekiss can because it has half the base speed as Togekiss, so it's like not going to be outspeeding anything. You can't flinch anything if you're not outspeeding it. Its passiveness, I think, just makes this Mon super out of place on this team because this team is anything but passive. It's an all-out offensive team, and then you just have Togetic there. It does have a pretty nice support move pool, though. As I mentioned, it is passive, so if things try to set up on this, you can potentially encore it into a setup move. get a free switch into something else. It does have Heal Bell. It's the only cleric that I have. Defog as well. This would be like my last resort hazard removal option because I have Torkoal with Rapid Spin and Drampa with Defog. It also gets Morning Sun as well. So if I had the Sun Up with this thing, I could recover a little bit more HP with it. The best move that it has that can take advantage of Serene Grace is Tri Attack. I'm kind of confused on whether this is a new addition to its moveset or not, because it seems like Togepi got Tri Attack in an event like back in Generation 3 or something. But regardless, if you run Tri Attack for whatever reason, you have a 40% chance to status the opponent with either a burn, freeze, or paralysis. So you couldn't. That's basically the best option that you have to burn something. If you want to paralyze something, you should probably just be running Thunder Wave on it. But yeah, honestly, if you have any better suggestions for this Tier 4 slot on my team than this Pokemon, please, I want to hear them. I desperately want to hear them. Last but certainly not least, I was looking at picking up a fighting type from Tier 4. The reason I left this till last pick was because there are a ton of fighting types in Tier 4, so I had a lot of different choices. And what I ended up going with was not something that I thought that I would end up going with, and perhaps it's not actually the best option for my team, but I decided to pick Gallade. And the reason why I say Gallade probably isn't the best for my team is because it's another Pokemon that is super frail on the physically defensive side. If you look at the majority of my team, its natural bulk is better on the special side than the physical side. Really, the only mons that are better on the physical side are Sandaconda, Torkoal, and Necrozma, just by a hair. So especially when I have very few switch-ins to Earthquake, I feel like this might not be the best option. But what tempted me to go after Gallade initially was the fact that it can use Trick Room. So I now have 3 Trick Room setters. So I kind of have like a Trick Room mode and a Sun mode, which I think is pretty cool. I can set Trick Room with Gallade, Mimikyu, or Necrozma. Torkoal, Copperajah, Drampa can all take advantage of the Trick Room super well. And Necrozma, the Trick Room setters can also potentially take advantage of the Trick Room some of them are probably going to have to run the room service item. And also, as I know very well from using Mega Gallade in the IBL, Gallade has a myriad of support options. Name a support move, it probably gets it. It does get some cool new buffs in Generation 8 though. Previously, it did not get Reversal. Reversal is super cool because you can run like a Trick Room Focus Sash set with Reversal, and I think Reversal's base power maxes out at 200. I think it's either 200 or 250. So that could deal an absolute ton of damage. Previously, its best fighting type attack would be Close Combat. So Reversal is at 1 HP would be like increasing by 80 base power, which is insane. You can also run like Endure. It gets Endure, so you can run Endure with Slackberry to bring yourself down to 1 HP and then boost your speed with Slackberry and spam Reversal that way. Another way you can boost its speed is with the new item Blunder Policy. That involves missing an attack first, but it does get Hypnosis. Credits to Sam, aka Fufu, for showing this set off on his Twitter. Hypnosis, Blunder Policy with Swords Dance, and then a couple of attacking moves. I feel like that could be a super fun set to run 1 week. Because if the Hypnosis misses, then you get your speed boost, but if it hits, then you get a free Swords Dance. So while this may not be the best fit for the team, I definitely think I'm going to have a lot of fun using it again, just like I had a ton of fun using Mega Gallade in the IBL. And with that, that's a wrap on this draft analysis. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out all of the coaches' links and my links as well, Twitter, Twitch. Make sure you leave a like on this video, comment down below on what you think of the team. and subscribe to the channel if you're excited to watch all of the team builders and battles coming up for this APA season. That will be 12 weeks regular season long, and then I think it has, I think there's 4 weeks of playoffs. Top 10, I believe, get into playoffs, and then if you're top 6, you get a bye to the second round. So, week 1 team builder up on Thursday. Week 1 match versus Grandmaster D-Ray up on Friday. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, thanks for watching again, and we'll see you next week for week 1 of season 3 of the APA Academy.